All right, I'd like to call the meeting. Woo, that's long. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I would like to ask if we could do roll call for us, sir, please.
Bout,
Here.
Crawford,
Here.
Fundraiser,
Here.
and Cubase.
Here. Second item on our agenda tonight is approval of the agenda. Any comments, changes or additions anybody has?
Mr. Chairman, I move the agenda be approved as presented.
Okay, Jim?
Second.
Jim squared, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval of the agenda is approved. The minutes from the September 12th, 2024 regular meeting would need to be approved. I had only one change there. I think it ended, Sarah, it said that Chair Bout closed the meeting. It should read Chair Kabashik. Yeah.
I'll push you out.
It's the last part of the whole thing.
In number
The very
10,
last
yeah,
sentence.
right
Very
there.
last sentence.
Yeah.
So that's to let you know I read through the whole thing. right?
If nothing else, it should say vice chair, but
If not, yeah. So that's the only thing I caught. I did read it through. I got to that part. Was there any other comments from, I guess
No.
that would be Jim and Richard, because you were,
Right, yeah, right. I have no,
no changes?
I thought they were fine,
Yeah, they
other
were.
than the last sentence.
Other than the last sentence, okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 12th, 2024 regular meeting as submitted, other than with the change for the closing statement of Bout Kabashik. Anyone else want to second that?
Sure, I'll second the motion.
All right, may I have first and a second? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
All right, Rio approved. Okay. This portion of of our meeting, we actually allow public comments. Public comments can be based on almost anything, can be regarding to anything you might want to talk to the zoning board about. It can be about the application tonight. The applicant will also have their chance to talk a little later as we go into further that. So just to let you know how that works. And I don't know if anyone has anything other than maybe what you want to say when you would get to your application or online. I guess we still do that, right? No one we know of right now, right? Okay. All right, so the item 4, public comments, will be closed. 5, unfinished business has none. Which brings us to item 6, which is new business. And that is our a request for 810 Allegan Street, a dimensional variance request, including lot coverage. So at that time, I would like to ask call that hearing to order and ask for a summary by the zoning administrator to give us an overview.
Thank you, Chair. There's no one online. I'm going to use the mic anyway. In front of us tonight, we have an application from the residents of 810 Allegan Street. The proposed project would need relief from the setback and lot coverage requirements of this district. Staff presented some concerns with the project in the packet, and the applicant intends to try and address some of those concerns tonight with a presentation, which we have ready. The presentation is also the sort of amendment to the packet that is with it, so you can follow along. There is plenty of support from neighbors and other members of the community in the packet, as well as some recommendations for possible motions you can make. As always, we have our legal team, Trent, with us. We have Dave Drusik, our contract planner, and the applicants are here tonight to present their case. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And, got it? Thank you very much. Then, the next thing I would do is ask if the applicant would like to step up to the podium and give us your name and give us your information that you feel you'd like to share tonight.
Hey, perfect. Thank you. My name is Chris Vishy, here with my wife Whitney and mother-in-law Jan and our daughter Palmer. We are full-time residents at 810 Allegan. We've been there for 10 years. As a vested family in the city, we are seeking a variance request to complete what we're calling our final project. And from a house that was built in 1890 to say this is a final project is a big milestone. When we first moved in there 10 years ago, we were all excited, and it has been one project after another after another. I grew up helping my dad do home inspections, and when I say this is the worst crawl space I've ever seen in my life, I mean that. One time we were down there, we found a deer skeleton. I don't know how it got down there. I don't know how long it's been down there, but at least it was a skeleton part.
Oh, my.
So, lots of fun in an old home. As noted in the pre-read memo, we were kind of surprised by the ZBA packet. There's some notes in there. The packet notes some items were required through the application process that I don't deem as requirements, but more suggestions. We met those requirements based on site and some of the diagrams that were required, but we're here and we're grateful for the opportunity tonight to walk through everything with you guys. Leading up to this meeting, we spent countless hours talking with Luke, and he's answered my phone calls and been there every step of the way. So thank you, Luke, for everything you've done. We spent a lot of time with our builder who helped us renovate our last project we did on the house, which we'll walk through the zoning variances we needed for that effort. Our ultimate goal is to do the right thing for our family and keep the historical integrity of our house. So it's a battle trying to do that on a house that was built in 1890. I'd like to familiarize everyone with our site plan and our ideal project, as we call the last project, the variances we require, and address some of the ZBA concerns in the packet. But just note, this is a very unique challenge for us. It's a burden to our growing family. And regardless of the owner, some of these projects, they need to be done regardless. So it's just a matter of time before something fatally casualty happens with the house and a big project's needed regardless. So we'll talk through that and go through some of the diagrams. Luke, if you don't mind, share the first diagram. We can start familiarizing things. The dimensional variance we require has zoning approval precedents from 2018. You see the green box there is what we added on. And what we had to do was shore up kind of the northwestern part of our house. What's interesting is that whole plane already goes past the lot line. So considering you need to be a 20-foot setback from the lot line on that street, you could take half our house away if we were to rebuild that today. So it's almost impossible to do any substantial project to fix anything with that burden of that lot line. What's interesting in the packets that were sent out before, house was built in 1890, the street was built in 1904. So we're just reacting to a subsequent zoning that was rezoned after the street was put in, with modern regulations and zoning changing the lot that we currently own today. So that's kind of the big burden there. And the set precedents we had from our 2018 project. And you also notice the blue line is where we're, what I consider a worst case scenario, what we would have to try and expand to. Actually, if I can point here, the sewage line kind of connects directly out from here, which is why that blue line is kind of strategically out to the north. So we're trying to say, we know it needs to be replaced. So if we're going to start digging up half our backyard, it just makes sense to kind of extend a line that would encompass that as well too. That's why we need the zoning variance connecting to here, because obviously we'd be going past that East Street setback, but we're not going any farther beyond the East Street boundary that we've already had set precedents approval for in our last zoning variance back then. You'll notice to our east, we're nowhere even close to the neighbor there, and we're not even getting any closer to the neighbor to the north, so none of those variances are required. Any questions on that?
No,
I don't have any.
Okay.
Go ahead, Richard.
what is, the blue line is the worst case scenario. What is the actual proposed building line?
That's what I put as our request, is that blue line.
Are are the figures for the square footage based on the blue line?
Square footage figures are pasted to the blue line.
That's,
Our goal, and you'll notice some of these diagrams, I work for an architecture firm, so I'm putting my strategic planning architect hat on when I'm trying to draw these to scale. But our goal is to hire an architect, not putting the cart before the horse, so making sure we're just being good stewards of resources, because it is expensive and there's a wait time now for any local architects in town. But we're trying to get the variance approval, hire an architect to figure out what's the actual program for the house that we want. But the sewage line is what scares me the most, keeps me up the most at night, because that's the one thing that would ensure we go that far north. I don't want to go that far north. The more house you build, the more expensive it is, and everything is more expensive than it needs to be nowadays.
okay.
So that's why, long answer
I'll
short.
let you proceed. I don't want
It's
to
a
delay the.
Yeah, it's a worst case scenario. And that's why we had to put the requirement for that perimeter just in case. And also, again, there's an electrical that connects the ancillary building that kind of comes through here. And it actually pops its head somewhere down there. I don't think it's gonna be in the way, but when you're digging things up, you never know what you're gonna find, and that's just another thing. I'd rather ask for the maximal allowance, have the flexibility while we're navigating some of these unknowns, and build something meaningful and not have to come back for a variance request because, hey, we got to go an extra foot because of X, Y, and Z. We talked about the setbacks. We talked about the zoning variance approval that we had beforehand that allowed us to do the addition in 2018. I think what's really important is that allowed us, before we had our growing family, it allows us to shore up the foundation in that sinking part of the house. And we redid all the electrical, we redid our fuse box. We haven't had a flooding in our crawl space since then. So we're trying to make long-term investments that when you wake up and you hear your pump going on in the crawl space and you just wonder, oh dear, what is going on now? It's not a good feeling. So these investments we make are worthy, they're working, and we see it as long-term investments in the house we want to keep. Another thing to notice is if you see kind of the setback limitations and the burden they pose, you can't build anything more than 188 square feet without requiring a lot coverage. So that's not even enough to add on an extra stall to the garage. So any development, even if we were trying to just dig outside the perimeter here, it'd require a lot coverage variance, just adding minimal square footage. So we're requiring a lot coverage variance as well too. If you go to the next slide, if you don't mind. Thank you very much, Sarah. One of the things we noticed with the change in East Street, it takes this whole strip of land, which is about 3,000 square feet, and has rezoned it as city right of way. So when we're thinking of the lot coverage equation, it kind of puts us in handcuffs and takes the biggest strip of land out of our equation. So we maintain the land, we make sure it's always good looking and well maintained, and it's kind of a burden that it can't be calculated toward that equation. And again, these blue lines kind of indicate what we're trying to do. We're trying to go up to 2 stories here, just trying to make it a little vertical expansion. But to do so, you need a proper foundation. Our foundation is currently on piers. So it's just in some areas a 4x4 that's not even having a pad underneath it. It's just sinking into the ground. And the whole house was surrounded by a steel skirt, which any chipmunk that wants to dig 6 inches below just has free reign in our crawl space. And that's always a fun one to chase out. So we're looking again to put a foundation around the house just to stop it from sinking into Mother Earth. Any questions as we keep going?
It says expansion concept 2 stories. Is that what I'm seeing there?
Correct, just in this zone right here.
What does the 25 to 30 feet mean?
Height.
And what's the restriction for height?
Great question.
30 overall, you mean overall versus the center? of-
Well, the center of the roof is like 28 max or
28.
something like that, and the overall 32. Is that compliant or not?
That I don't know off the top of my head. When
Okay.
we're talking about this, Luke, keep me honest, we were.
Yeah,
within-
well, I will note that obviously, if the variances for lot coverage and setbacks got approved this afternoon, the next step would be the planning commission, because they're going over on the lot area ratio. After that, there would be, the zoning approvals. So when it comes to the overall height, I mean, that's something that's administratively approvable. We would make sure that that's compliant, for sure.
But there is a floor area ratio problem as well.
There is a floor area, they will be going over on floor area ratio, so they need special land use approval from the planning commission. So pending approval, that would be the next step.
Then this is a three-step process.
Yeah.
It goes to planning, then.
Yeah, well, and the last step,
Again,
is just the standard. Okay, we've now got the variance, we've now got the special land use. Now we're going to submit the full plans, knowing that, okay, we can go over on lot coverage to this amount, we can encroach on the setback this much, and we can go over on the floor area ratio. Now we'll submit the complete set of plans to zoning. Zoning can administratively approve that, whereas they wouldn't be able to before because of the lot coverage, the setbacks, and the floor area ratio. So the height would be addressed at sort of my level.
And two things, I know that the 30 feet is higher than I'd want to ever go, because just to scale it, it throws off the site a little bit, but knowing the house is already at 25 feet on the front, garage is at 25 feet. A typical two-story house is 20 to 25 feet. We wouldn't go as high as 30, but again, I'm just trying to throw a scale, a range before we hire an architect and actually get a detailed plan.
Thank you.
And then I know for, again, the special land use, if assuming approval here, we're gonna need the definer architect is trying to measure, I'm good with math, but trying to measure the actual square foot addition here gets a little interesting. So, one step at a time, again, not trying to put the cart before the horse. Architects and time are expensive, done right, and just trying to do one step at a time. If we go to the next slide, I think it just hits on, again.
Can I ask you to go back again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go back if you would, sir. I just want to make sure I get my orientation straight. Right. So as I look at that, Allegan is on the left. Yeah, east, okay.
Yeah.
And then your blue prior edition, and then the expansion of that one. I'm just trying to make sure.
Hey, and Chris, when you were answering, if you could answer into this.
The blue,
Because Trent and Dave wouldn't be able to hear you, just in case they need to address something.
Perfect.
Yep, thank
It's,
you.
their picture is like this, I think.
yeah, I think it's like this. Yeah, okay, right, got it now. So so on this side over here, where we look at this print like this.
Yep.
I mean, it's straight there. It looks like it goes out. I'm not sure. That's a heck of an overhang for a gable or something. I'm not sure what that would be different than what we're looking at on the floor plan.
This one.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and talk through this and answer the question. Attempt to do a 3D kind of putting topography to it. The plane is right here.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just trying to make it look like there's a peak up top, but
Okay.
what you're looking at is the limitation we're looking for.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm thinking plan view here, so Okay.
You're absolutely right. Yep.
I wasn't quite sure what that was doing. I see you're showing like your hips or your connection on the other one coming in, right? That's your angle coming in from this side, like a dormer and then a dormer out.
So,
Got it. So you're just showing a roof line, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
see, I assumed it was some type of bay window effect, some type
Yeah, I
of
didn't quite get
something
it.
like that, or not bay window, and so in actuality, the blue line runs straight down from the deck.
Exactly. Yeah, it should be. I think the best view is the one you have on your page if you're looking at it from a plan view. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we're,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, we're,
yeah.
without elevations and things like that, we're
Thanks
just,
to our
I mean,
ecological-
our deal is plan view, but on the other hand, just trying to understand it.
I'm good at math, not great at drawing, so I appreciate the correction.
It's all right. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, good, I appreciate, breaks things up a little bit here. This is again, just to show that square footage, the 3,000 square feet, again, it's unaccounted for in our equation, so. Again, we're assuming with the prior expansion setting precedents of why we need the variances to East Street. I think the variance we're more trying to highlight is the lot area variance, so knowing it's a substantial 3,000 square feet.
And that's in the road right of way, right? Is
That's
that
city
not-
right of way.
Yeah, that's the road, right? Yeah, that's part of the road. Is it in the road right of way or is it in the hypothetical 20-foot setback?
So that portion of the property is city right away, and that is pretty typical, you know.
Right.
Whether you have a pathway running through it or not, oftentimes there is some right of way that's maintained by.
But you,
by
yeah,
property
you
owners.
normally wouldn't, unfortunately.
No, it wouldn't count.
Consider that.
It's not a part of the parcel, no, that is city property right there, so.
Although in going by, driving by, slowly by a couple of times, and you know, there is some aesthetic value to it,
Absolutely.
even though, you know, there is some value to it
Mm.
aesthetically. It doesn't look terrible, I mean,
Right.
in terms of the way the house is situated. But never, yeah, it can't really be counted though, yeah.
And going back though, if East Street was never developed though, that land would likely be counted on our equation is the challenge. So, and granted, this happened over 100 years ago and I'm stating historical facts, but we're in there now, we're trying to make the best of it. And this is, we take care of it. We'll always take care of it.
So just to keep going, Luke, is their front yard the Allegan Street?
Yeah,
Correct.
so the front yard is Allegan Street, yeah. And
Yeah,
so, well,
yeah.
I say yes, so,
Yeah.
they're on a corner lot. So
Right.
they have two fronts, Allegan Street and, I'm sorry, what is East Street? Thank you.
East
So
side, yeah.
the way it works is, they have to take the setbacks from, they have two front setbacks, and then
Right.
they can designate a side setback and a rear setback.
Right.
But yeah, so traditionally, the frontage is Allegan Street, but they still have to conform to the setbacks, the front yard setbacks on East Street also.
And this lot was, I don't want to belabor it or make this discussion longer than it needs to be, but it would appear that this lot was sort of cut out at some point, or, you know, a long time ago from as half of two separate lots so that it's turned the other way. I mean, originally platted in this 1904, there was, these lots ran the other way and this house was on it. Except this house, it would appear, wasn't the same house as it is now. It was looked probably a small house. I mean, I assume that this house was built prior to the plat. And but anyway, they've turned this around. Somebody turned it around. You've made the lot run the other way.
If you look at the neighbors across the street, I mean, it's the same situation on that side too. That's simply because it's facing Allegan Street, I think.
Well, but this lot isn't as originally platted, in the 1904 plat.
Okay.
I mean, it would appear, I mean, I think I'm right. It's not, otherwise there'd be a lot that would run this way. And you're saying this is the way it runs now. I mean, I didn't put the red in that. I assume that red is there. That's, well, we see that from the lot, that it was because I was wondering, you know, just what comes first here, the chicken or the egg? The house was built in 1890, something like that. And this street wasn't platted until 1904. At least it says all this in the background information. And it was cut out of these two lots, it would appear. And the way that, and then I'm thinking, why would somebody do that except just driving by the house, I thinking maybe this house was just the front part at one point. I might be totally wrong. So the house may have fit, you know, on that lot originally, the way, but anyways, there's some extenuating circumstances about this property and this house and the way that it's situated, and that are not typical, that doesn't really add up to exactly to a hardship, but there's some extenuating circumstances,
Okay,
period.
yeah.
Our builder likes to say your house has a lot of character, except I know when he says that, it's not a compliment. I'd like to, if, unless there's any other questions with the diagrams, could address some ZBA comments and questions from neighbors. If that's okay.
I'm sure we'll have some.
Sure.
Chris, there's no doubt about it. We're gonna have some questions. And, if if you're comfortable in what you wanted to at least start with, then what we'll do is we'll go into, what we move into next is any comments that any comments people want to make about the application.
Yeah.
And go through the letter, we'll reference the letters that have been written, and then we'll go into our private meeting deliberation and then have questions for you.
Okay.
So,
Sure, just a few kind of closing comments here. I wanted to thank a lot of the neighbors who wrote positive, supportive feedback. Our neighbor directly to the west, Brian and Kirby Stevens, their letter was initially left out of the packet and then it was put back in. Him and his wife wrote a very nice letter. And I've spent hours kind of talking through them with this because we were there when they were under construction. We understand construction isn't a fun time. It impacts neighbors. So I wanted his support, being it would likely impact him the most. If it hasn't been read, I can read it out loud. If you guys are planning to read it.
we have received them and read them. Typically what I'll do is I'll reference who had, who had submitted their address and whether they were for or against, but we have received all the letters. Yeah. So,
Knowing they did their construction project in the past 10 years too, they know some of the pains trying to build on a corner lot. So it resonated well with him and he was very supportive of the project.
yeah.
I know there was some comments from Joe Leonardi that he was initially misinformed. His comments were then corrected and he recommended exactly what we're trying to do, build out into the backyard and build up. We reached out to John Thomas. He was completely unaware of our home's condition and subsequent impact on the East Street development. Not saying he support or rejected, but he understood where we were coming from. Other than that, I want to say thank you to Luke at City Hall. He's taken many of my frantic phone calls and I know it's not easy in the seat he's in. So I just appreciate his support. Some of the comments we received from Horizon Community was that our packet was significantly lacking detailed architectural and schematic diagrams and 3D renderings. I can't state enough, we're trying not to put the cart before the horse, and site plans and surveys by definition have been submitted. It's our full intent to hire an architect following approval, but it's months of a wait list and it's thousands of dollars. We're just trying to be good stewards of money when we try and consider a long-term investment of this. Really, our ultimate goal is to remain at our address, create a safer home for our family and longstanding investment at 810 Allegan. We want to safeguard the history and property and create something that we're proud of it and our neighborhood's proud of it too. And I think that means a lot from Brian and Kirby's support as well too. Zoning approvals look for unique circumstances that place a burden or a hardship on property owner. We're asking you to consider the hardships of the setbacks placed on East Street, the East Street development, subsequent zoning codes thereafter, the deferred maintenance of our home. Ever since we've moved in, we've been trying one project at a time to make it a long-standing home. Kind of looks sad when you see the chimney that's just in different brick colors there. But in short, we really desire to stay here. The charm of the house, keep the aesthetic of the neighborhood top of mind. And again, we're trying to be good stewards of our resources. We're trying to stay in the home for our growing family, and we appreciate your support.
Oh, thank you. Because for my clarity, if you're, let's see, the existing footprint, let's say, that you have now, have you updated that crawl space, that foundation? Or is that part of this? I'm trying to understand what I hear
Yeah,
about the crawl space and the foundation and
the only crawl
how
space.
this all works.
Yeah, no, great question. The only crawl space that's new was our northwest addition on the right where basically starting there and going around.
So your existing foundation is updated. Is that what I'm under, the
No,
exact?
No,
Just the-
there's 20% of our house has proper foundation.
Just in the new edition that was approved last time?
Exactly.
So what is how do you solve that?
Great question. So about 100 years of poor water mitigation has made the entire back of the house the sinking problem. Front of the house is bone dry and good. So by cutting in along, sorry, trying to direct myself, along the east side of the house.
Okay.
And just putting in a whole foundation outside of here and a whole foundation outside of there. That will fix any sloping, slagging parts of our foundation that need to be fixed.
So is that a crawl space or is that a?
Correct. Yep.
It's a crawl space.
And
So-
would stay a crawl space. We're not looking to do a basement. At one point, my home inspector dad tried to.
And your
convince us-
existing foundation supports 2 stories and everything for where you're looking to build them up over the existing? 2
There
stories?
is 100 square foot loft, right? So it's kind of useless attic space for storage space, for lack of better words. So to go a second story, there's no way we could do it with the current foundation.
So how about on the west and south side? I mean, I can see where the blue line is. Will there be a new foundation put under the rest of the building, or you think you can get by with that? And to that point, well, is this enough to support a second story?
The west, south, so the front, looking at the house, the front left corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bone dry there. All the piers are actually on proper foundation.
But you've looked at this being in your background and
Correct, yeah.
I assume you're gonna have bedrooms or upstairs and.
I work from home 100% of the time, so it's been interesting trying to work from home
And one of the reasons we ask for apparently some elevations is obviously this elevation here is not correct. I mean, in terms of, it makes it appear that it's just like maybe, it's not 28, 30 feet high, the blue lines there, obviously. And which will come into play when you into the character of the neighborhood thing and all of that, which later, but nevertheless, okay.
We're, by all means, again, we're not trying to build a mega structure here that looks misproportional to the house, but I mean, with the addition, we're trying to keep the character and aesthetics intact. We're trying to put 2 bedrooms up top, which a bedroom, I think on average is what, 120 square foot with hallway. So it's, less than probably 1,000 feet would go up top there. Rough math, way less than that. That's our goal, at least. And then I get a dedicated office to work from home where hopefully the noises and crying and screams don't always disturb your day.
You started to mention someone else talked about raising the house up, putting a basement under it with a proper foundation.
Yeah.
Why is that not an option?
My dad, the home inspector, to do that, you would disturb everything else in the house and you kind of just, one domino impacts a lot of other things. It'd be a lot of money and we wouldn't get the return out of it. If we were to completely gut the entire house and we went back in time 10 years and we had the resources we do now, maybe that would be a better consideration back then. We're kind of down a path now where we've done project by project by project. So to do all that now, we'd kind of disturb things we've already done.
Why? You'd be lifting it up and putting a proper foundation under it like we saw at that other house in town.
So your counters, your drywall, everything else kind of lifts up and disturbs. So you're
Yeah,
just.
I did that with a house that I moved
Okay, yeah,
and it didn't get disturbed.
okay. That's impressive. I know Brian and Kirby did it across the street too when they did their addition. To be honest, we haven't considered it. We're trying to do the fastest, least disturbance path possible, so.
Well, it would give you a proper foundation, a full basement, and a foundation that would support a second story in parts of the house. Maintaining lot coverage.
I worry, to get the equipment in there, there's no way to do that without kind of disturbing our neighbor to the north, the east, has just recently renovated their entire house. They're renovating their driveway right now. That could be a challenge, just trying to get the equipment in there to do it.
Could be, but those guys are really good.
Scratch your back with, one of their trucks, right? Yeah, to be honest, I haven't considered it. I've talked with my builder. I've had him over multiple times and we've shot through a bunch of ideas and that just hasn't stuck.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, these questions keep me up at night. There's no perfect answer. So I appreciate the questions.
I've been down your road.
Yeah, no, it makes me feel a little less crazy. So I appreciate it.
All right. All right. Thanks, Chris. Well, then we'll move along and we'll see if there's any other,
Thank you.
yeah, any other ones, people that would like to make any comments. And if not, we'll go into our deliberation. So that puts us into anyone else that would like to make any comments on the application tonight, whether in the audience or against or online? No one that way. Oh,
We have a comment from the audience.
Palmer would like one. Yeah, that's pretty nice.
I think
Yeah,
that's fair.
yeah, I think that was a yes. Or that was a motion, maybe. Okay, so then I also would like to, I'll also go with the comments that we have some supporting comments on some letters that was referenced by Chris that were all included in our packet. And I know that, I believe we've all had a chance to read those. There were seven letters of correspondence. The people who did send them was Joe Leonardi, and he is at 712 Allegan Street. And Joe's letter was in favor of the variance. Another one was from Donna Carrillo, which is 142 Taken Street, was also for the in favor of the variance. There was one from a John Weishorn, it might be pronounced, at 119 West Street, who was not in favor of the variance. And then Betsy Beckman at 823 Mason Street was in favor. Ron and Sandy Collins, nice letter there, it's also 137 East Street were in favor of. Brian and Stefan and Kirby Peterson were for it. And John, another one from John Thomas of 141 West Street was against it. So there were 5 people in favor, 2 people not in favor out of the 7 letters that we received. So there was some good letters written and very nice to have the involvement of the neighborhood. Okay. So that kind of goes through us, our supporting and opposed letters. And at that point, I would say I would like to go into a private session, our deliberation amongst our board members, and so that we can have discussions. And if we have, I'm sure we'll have some questions for you, Chris, come back with some thoughts. So at that point, we'll let you know if we do. Luke, in one of my first starting question, making sure is, we know there's a lot coverage, of course, part of us in front of us tonight, and want to make sure that we're also understanding that we have, there's a prior 2018 variance that was given for the east side, right? Setback for the east in 18. for the addition.
Correct?
And so tonight, as we look at the proposal and understand what they're looking to accomplish, are there, if aside from the, let's take the dimensional part, which I'm going to reference more as any setbacks, not in the lot coverage, is none of the additions that they want to, well, let's see. Does the garage portion meet the setback over there? Is there a variance request for that part, or does that meet?
There's a variance request for the garage also.
garage. Well, that's for the east side setback, right? Because
Yeah.
of the front yard.
Yeah.
So if you were to do that, I mean, let's just say, and that's the only portion that would need the variance, right?
No,
Garage.
the principal structure and the accessory structure would both need a setback variance from East Street. If you go to page,
Okay. But this already
20
has the green portion has a variance,
correct.
which
But-
goes with the rest of it, a lot of times.
So there was a approved portion already, but the planned construction from the approved, the already existing addition would still only be 10 feet from East Street,
Okay,
which would require a 10-foot variance, because obviously there's a 20-foot setback. So if you go to page 22, that outlines pretty well.
so that requires a 10-foot a 10-foot variance there.
Yeah, so the relief required for the principal structure would be 10 feet from East Street, and the relief required for the accessory structure would be 13 feet from East Street, because the accessory
garage.
structure is, they're gonna be building,
So
they're
that's
7
13
feet from the
that's
property line.
13 feet on the garage, right?
Yep.
So those variances, those are two issues that we're looking at for our setback.
Yes,
10-foot on the main structure and 13 feet on the accessory.
correct.
Mr.
And
Chair,
then the lot coverage.
Oh,
just to clarify, the measurements from the survey, the accessory building, if it's actually measured to scale, is 8 feet from the right of way. The variance request is for 7 feet. And the request for the expansion of the principal dwelling, it was requested for 10 feet. But if you scale it, it's actually 12.5 feet from the right of way. So there's some slight discrepancies between an actual to-scale measurement of the survey versus what was requested. So just want to make note of that, that there could be some jogs in the buildings based on what's been requested versus actually scaling it out. So as mentioned before, in the report mentions concern with the scale and the setbacks drawn on the plan and the exact nature of it, as well as the lack of detail concerning the elevations, which are required as part of the variance application, not suggested.
you guys.
I guess. Well, it's not exact, is what we're saying. What are you saying?
That's we may not have exact. So the page 22 outlines
So if
the proposal.
if we were to make any kind of a motion tonight to approve that, we would have to.
We would most
Even if we're
likely,
gonna deny it, we ought to know what we're denying. But whether it's, whether it's 10 feet and 13 or 12 and 7, or what I'm hearing.
I think if you get to a point where you would be looking to make an motion to approve, I think you'd have to request further information to get exact measurements.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, just one more comment. And the only other thing you could say is that since you don't have the exacts here, if you were leaning toward approval, you could say that the setback of the accessory building, the variance would be allow for building no closer to the right of way than the existing structure. And then for the principal building, the structure could be no closer than the eastern portion of the 2018 variance. So you
Yes.
basically, you, instead of referencing the exact measurements, that would be preferable to have on the plan. You
Sure,
could just
yeah.
mention in line with or no closer than, if that would help.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay. That's kind of where I was going with the other one we're saying with, that we already gave the 18 on both, actually. Well, I guess was there one on, must have been one on the garage at that time too, right? The accessory building? Is it?
Oh, assumably I have a variance for the northwest addition. I don't see anything on the,
No, the
On the
garage was
accessory
not a
structure.
Subject of discussion at that time. It was, as
It
I
was just-
understand
it
it,
was
was
just this.
confirming just that.
It was just
yeah.
this, right? So we're not sure if maybe that has been a violation in the long term.
Yeah.
And just got improved upon, the existing garage.
Well, they want to improve upon it, but
Well,
it's,
okay. But it's been there
it's legally non-conforming right
legally
now, is my
non-conforming.
understanding. yeah.
Right, yeah, okay. So, but that wouldn't be, yeah, okay.
as is the rest of the house other than the addition.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't,
So you're increasing the nonconformity here by setback, by adding on
Mhm.
the accessory building. Technically, you're not increasing the main building setback on the east side.
Well, the
need a
setback, no,
variance.
but you are increasing the nonconformity with that area that's outside the buildable area there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, okay.
That couldn't.
Yeah, as long as, yeah, because it's not back to the red line.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But couldn't they keep it to the side of this side of the house? If they, then if, based off of what you just said, couldn't they, if they went like that, but kept it with the conformity of that house, wouldn't that then bring that back in and not have the addition to the garage? Wouldn't
Well, it
that
might help the
then-
lot coverage too, but. I see what you're
Well,
saying.
the project says that, I'm looking for the page. It would reduce the lot coverage request, but they've only got, to meet the standard, they've only got about 162 square feet available for lot coverage, putting aside floor area ratio.
now, these figures here, are these from the applicant or are these from us or
Those are from the applicant.
So if we assume those are correct, they've only got about a 2% of the lot, which is like 162 square feet or something
Right.
available.
well, yeah, I mean, I just used, I'm skipping ahead here. You got, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this, 430, according to this, is the house addition. And available is, say, 192, so that leaves a 238 difference. If we just deal with the house, not the garage, not the accessory building. I mean, well, I'm sort of maybe, I don't want to skip ahead, but if we just said, you know, if the big thing is lot coverage, then the house addition is 430, and then apparently there's one, I think I read 192 available to the 30% build out.
Well,
That leaves 238.
they're at 27.7% lot coverage right now existing, so that leaves them 2.3%
So
of
even but-
8,156 square feet of lot. I'm looking at this page.
Okay.
So 2.3 times 8,156, 1% is 81.5. So you got about 162 or 3 or 4 square feet available to get you to 30%, considering where the house and the garage are today.
187.58 according to my calculator.
Pardon?
187.58.
187? That is a no.
187, yeah.
Is all they could have.
That would be the
The
amount
line.
of square footage they could use that could theoretically be approved administratively without any kind of variance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the, yeah, it's fine, I mean, no sense quibbling over, it, but on page 8, I guess it is, says, from the report, the applicant currently has approximately 192 square feet available before the lot coverage maximum 30% is exceeded. But anyway, that's where I got that 192.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Somewhere around 190. Between 187, 192. So, okay.
As long as we're just.
A
hashing
10
things.
by 20.
Yeah, yeah.
A 10 by 20.
12 by 20 is actually what closer.
Or somewhere in there.
But because we're gonna be, we're bumping up against this two-pronged monster here,
Yeah.
The lot coverage. Well, there's actually three. There's the lot coverage and then there's the encroachments and whatnot and affect it. And also the character issue. I'm a little, I don't quite understand, well, I understand it, but the procedural thing here, I don't know. When does that one part of the ordinance kick in that deals with the character issue? Is that when lot coverage is exceeded, or, there's that relatively new ordinance is put into effect several years ago that called for the quote unquote character of the neighborhood. And I thought I heard you guys reference that.
I'm not sure what ordinance you're referring to, but that does go back to the master plan.
Well,
And
no,
thi-
this is an actual ordinance, I believe.
City, or the city.
Yeah, where the city, and it had to do with a house that was built on Elizabeth Street and in the planning commission. And did our planner come up? Well, he's not speaking, so.
So one of the standards for variances is that by granting a variance, the essential character of the neighborhood would not be altered. But that's just a standard to obtain the variance. I'm not sure exactly the language you're speaking of. Sorry, Rich.
And then just to add to that, under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, the spirit of the zoning ordinance being observed, the public safety being observed, and the substantial justice being done is the standards that are within the MZEA. So that could also sort of relate to the character of the neighborhood. I think it's definitely a factor that should be considered when granting the variance or denying.
So if we were to pass some type of thing, though, you'd said this goes to the planning commission and goes to the, why wouldn't it have gone to the planning commission in the first place? Is this, and you referenced some special land use. I didn't.
Yeah.
Is that because there's an encroachment or?
No. So the reason they would need to get a special land use permit is because they would be going over the maximum floor area ratio, which I believe in this district is 0.3. So essentially 30% of your lot can be taken up by the.
And there's that's probably key. And in the, why is it then going to the planning commission? There must be some provisions.
It's for floor area ratio only.
Right.
And that's not something that's inside the zoning code. So that's not something you can't ask for a variance from that. It's granted via.
I think that's what I'm referencing. That's why it has to go to the planning commission.
That's why it
Yes.
has to go to the planning commission.
It's intended to be a measure of bulk.
Right.
To
It's
keep-
I'm thinking you'll find this is a relatively new ordinance. I might be wrong, but okay, I understand. It's the bulk. And that's what that's the bulk in this with the height is go to the neighborhood there and look and,
Right.
and I'm seeing that and I'm seeing that as a concern, but
And to the applicant's side is they're trying to they're probably looking for, as a site plan to figure out what that area, what is allowable, as a zoning allowance with a variance or not. And then bulk comes into whether they meet that bulk or not, or whether that would even pass. Or to meet the ratio, it makes a difference on their ratio, depending on what we give or don't give, or however that works out.
And in terms of why that didn't come before planning commission first,
Yeah.
I think that was maybe just my recommendation to go with ZBA first.
Well,
have
for,
any
for
precedent?
planning, to go to planning, they would want to see exact drawings and scale and things like that. And the applicant doesn't want to invest money in that until they know that this is doable for the setbacks and the lot coverage.
Do we have any precedents where we have approved something that's this large of a space?
As far as lot coverage, or you're talking about bulk now with the ratio?
A lot coverage.
One enables the other, I guess, so, depending on how you meet that. That's part of the process as a two-step
Yeah.
situation. I mean, it's kind of an enforcer of the final plan. That's why the planning commission looks at it and the zoning administrator to enforce it, that they don't that they do meet the ratio when they do, do the final plans and get the final building permits and everything of that nature.
Right.
It really doesn't fall into us
No.
ever at all, as far as floor ratio, as what we're saying.
Right.
Of course, aren't we?
We could be enabling the chance, but that doesn't mean we control it.
Mhm.
And the lot coverage, of course, increased lot coverage. I use the word enables that. It puts that at risk.
One of my questions was what is available to them by right? And it's, I'm thinking almost nothing. I mean, because it encroaches, it encroaches on city, or am I wrong about, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
What are they entitled to
By-
do
by
by
right-
right without ever really messing with any of
by
this?
right, I think they could raise it up, put a proper foundation and or a basement underneath it, and they could add a second floor if we gave them a variance for that, because it goes into the setback area, but that would not include, that would be dimensional variances, but that would not be a lot coverage variance.
Right.
Not sure if that's exactly the case, just because I'm not sure of the exact floor area ratio. So adding a basement.
Basements don't count in floor area
Oh, sorry,
ratio.
adding the second floor, at second story.
second-
may still require special land use.
It may, depends on what happens with the garage as well. So there's a lot of the
mean, just
the
for our-
crystal ball is not real clear.
I'm trying to figure out if there's any way to enable them to do what their stated objectives are, which is to have a safer, more livable house, and one that would be big enough for a family and that type of a thing. So that's why I'm focusing more on the home as opposed to the accessory. building.
Right. I agree with that. Well, so tonight, basically, what we're looking at, unless we were to make a table or something like that, we're setting, looking at for the setbacks that we discussed earlier on East Street, on the main building and the accessory building. That's what is in front of us, along with the lot coverage. And for my clarity, do we go through the standards for each one of those, for this dimensional, then the lot coverage?
I think the comments made by staff were
It could
taking
be
the whole
both.
project into
It could-
considerations. However you'd like to do it.
Okay. Does the board have any preference, whether we keep it all, go through the standards and keep in mind both issues?
I think separating them might be a good idea because the placement of the house
Yeah,
obviously is going to come into play with regards to the setbacks.
Yeah,
It's a unique placement and therefore, setback variances may be considered. But keeping lot coverage setback, keeping the lot coverage question separate might be a good idea for going to the requirement.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in too, I would just agree with Luke on that, especially given the situation where if one were to be approved or tabled or denied, if we're gonna separate these at all, I think it'd be better to go through each standard for each variance request, or for both variance requests.
for the dimensional and the lot coverage.
You agreed with.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The other problem I've got is that, the pig in the poke factor here. I mean, I just can't tell what they're quite, as I asked, and I can appreciate they don't know what they're gonna get into till they get into it. But we and I am not used to operating like that.
Well, I'm thinking if we do the lot coverage issue first, and if that's approved, then we would have to do the dimensional variances. But if the lot coverage is not approved, there's no point in doing the dimensional variances. It's moot.
That's one way of looking at it. Or if there was a potential of giving them, reverse it, if there was a potential of giving them allowable to extend the garage, accessory building. And it depends on how far they can go, 192 feet here or 192 feet there, let's say, right? Or whatever that number is. Choose one or the other if they're not getting, if that didn't increase. Yeah, it is that way. You're right. It could be one way or the other.
Yeah, and I before we get into that, I wanted to clarify one more thing where I'm confused here a little bit, please. Luke, this is the setback line on East Street. So everything here is legally non-conforming. So if is the second story going to extend into this area, which is legally non-conforming, that would be expanding a non-conformance.
Correct.
So we would need a variance for that
But that's
as well.
would be. Yeah, you need a setback variance for anything above that. Yeah, you would need variances for.
You guys see what I'm saying?
You do now.
Between, anything on this side of that.
Yeah.
Anything on this side, if it's a second story or a modification to what's there,
Which
we're
is,
expanding a legally non-conforming building.
Right.
And that would require a variance because you're expanding a non-conformance.
Building.
And the
But would you be
request-
expanding the non-conformity, or would you just be expanding the building within the same envelope? Because I'm not sure I'm following what you guys are saying.
You're not expanding,
So like, would you be increasing the non-conformity, making the setbacks, even closer to the property line, or would you just be building within the same envelope of the building?
you'd be building in the same envelope,
Yeah.
but you're adding square footage to an area that's non-conforming. A second story.
So the way that the chart or the code reads is a lawful non-conforming structure may not be enlarged, expanded, or altered in any way which increases its non-conformity. Which I would interpret as long as you're not increasing the degree of non-conformity, the impact of the non-conformity, you probably would be okay.
So that would be okay. All right, thank you. That
Yeah.
clears that up.
Trent, I thought we had a section there that said at every structural level. And so I think there might be a concern and maybe Chris could clarify the prior addition that's noted in green. Is there intended to be a height increase over the prior addition? So a second story within 10 feet of the right of way should probably have a variance, but it's not clear from the drawing if the second stories are just supposed to be added in the blue area, which is 10 to 12 feet back from the, and Trent, the reason why this is quite, we had a deep conversation on this for the 650, 640 Water Street. And so
Yeah,
we're, Ryan and I had to work that with your office on a few things. So I just,
yeah.
some clarification on, in the green area where it says prior addition, will that be expanded upward or not?
Green area will not, blue area will.
Okay.
Blue area will, okay.
Yeah, but
But still would require a,
the blue area connects to the green area.
And and so that's why the request is 10 feet, because the blue area starts 10 feet back from the property line.
Okay.
So the relief is, requested relief is 10 feet, and obviously that makes the 20-foot total.
Okay.
I say we go with, let's start with the lot coverage first,
Okay.
all right? Is that okay, Jim?
And we're just fine. We're just considering the plan, the application as it is.
As it is submitted. And this, we'll go through the lot coverage, go through the standards, and then go back to the dimension. And now, want to make some notes and a reference here that if our comments or our findings of fact might be part combined between some comments back and forth, there could be duplicated when it comes to the dimensional or the dimensional versus the lot coverage. Or we end up stating a similar thing on each one of them. So if we're going to have that and we have some recommended outlines here, we have to watch how that overplays into each one of them, I guess. They can duplicate, my opinion. What we can do is I can go back to another way of looking at each standard. We can talk about what the standard reads and then make our own comments. And then it's the old way we used to do it. You could go through, you really can go through all of them and then make a presentation that it says, you can make a motion based on your findings of facts one way or the other for all standards and not have findings of fact of each one. Do you guys follow that?
Say that one more time.
Well, in other words, if you look at the way this is in front of us, you can read, number one.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the same, it's going to be the same standard for each situation.
Yeah.
And so one comment one for lot coverage might be different comments than what you would have for the variance, right? This can go both. You could go through and forget all the comments right now, and you could go through and we can discuss each standard. And at the end, based on what we discussed, make a motion on that, let's call it lot coverage. Based on that it was either we found that it met all four, or it, met one or two or three and didn't meet it, and here's why. Then you can go back and do the dimensional setback the same way. But I'm saying is some of this stuff might be duplicated. That's where I was trying to get to. So you don't have to have an answer for every one of these. You can go through and say, do we feel that number one or number two, number three, number four is met based on the lot coverage? And that either is a yes or no, or it goes or doesn't go. Has to meet all four on each one.
So lot coverage is one discussion, and then the total of the setbacks.
The setbacks.
Is
the
a
total,
second
yeah,
discussion.
on the accessory and the building is.
Yeah.
Yeah, is another discussion.
Yeah.
You read the same standards.
Yeah. And it's the standards I'm looking at page 9 of 33.
I don't know if I confused everybody, but maybe I did. Point is, if you're doing them together, the comments are more related to both.
Right.
Right.
But we are doing them.
But we are doing both. But if we want to talk about them individually, or we can do it this way, we
Yeah,
can go through each one and talk about it in, talk about how each one fix it. We can do it that way.
I understand what you're getting at. I'm not, I'll just talk and
We
you
can
can tell
read,
me
we
if I'm
can
right.
read one and say, okay, let's talk about how that relates to the
Right.
lot coverage. And then we can say, okay, now, let's read it one more time and to see what that means to the dimensional. And then come up with our findings on each one. Basically, we're doing the same thing. We're just gonna do them at once. How's that?
Sounds great.
Sound good? All right, we're gonna do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the 4 standards and let's do, in our minds, let's start with the thought that the first time we read it, it is on lot coverage.
Okay.
And then we'll make our comments and then we'll go back and we'll see how we feel about that. Then we'll go back and read it again based on the dimensional. Okay?
Mhm.
And we'll go on to the second one. All right, let's try it. Jim, I'm gonna let you start the first one because I think you got an idea of what I was trying to go there. So we'll make our own notes.
We're going to find out if I followed that or not. Okay, the standard, which we are required to review and which it is mandatory that the standard be meant in these words. That strict compliance with area setbacks, frontage height, bulk, or density, and in this case, lot coverage, would prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. The answer to that is that, number one, this standard for lot coverage is not met, in my opinion, because the lot already has a usage. So that the addition here would not prevent the lot from being used and would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. It's already conforming. It's a legally non-conforming use. So for lot coverage, that standard is not met, in my opinion. There are some extenuating circumstances. This is a smaller than standard size lot in the city, but it is not unique. There are many lots this size or smaller. There are also many corner lots in the city. So there are also many very older homes in the city. And so the lot itself has an allowed legally non-conforming use as it is today. And increasing the lot coverage would not keep it from being used. So for lot coverage, my statement is this standard is not satisfied.
Anybody else have any comments on what Jim has said as far as his opinion as far as the way lot coverage affects number one? And first of all, lot coverage is can be a very tough variance to accomplish. It's very hard sometimes. It's a lot harder than dimensional. And when you read some of it, because, we'll get into some of the other ones, but, strict compliance with the area setbacks, would, if you read that, unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property. It's been used. It's not like it's changing the use or anything, or or the way it's been used as a residential property, would it render them unnecessary, or render it conforming unnecessarily burdensome? Surely in the homeowner's eyes, for the things they would like to have, it might consider that. From a neighborhood area, would you say that that is unnecessarily burdensome? There are situations where people have more and less than that in a way.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say that that's neither one or the other. I personally would agree with Jim that it does not meet that, number one.
And we have granted variances in the past, but they've typically been small. And they would be things like to square up this building,
Yeah,
rather than to expand it.
Right.
yeah. Or sometimes what happens is your percentage, usually a small percentage, makes a big difference. 1% or so, or something like that, or maybe I'm throwing out a number, 1 or 2% can make a big difference in a property as opposed to
yeah,
7-8%.
yeah.
So Richard, do you have any lean on that first one on lot coverage?
Yeah, well, I would just pick up on what you said last, was that in the past, there have been certain allowances of a small nature, smaller nature, and that could perhaps work. And that's why I brought up the figures that I brought up earlier. These figures aren't there yet, but particularly the application as it stands now is asking for a much larger variance than would be than would meet the standard.
So that's a no.
That's a no. Yeah, I didn't. That would be a no.
Jim?
I'll agree, but not that. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, so it's, right now, it's without any kind, for going further. But all would come back to a general motion sometime, but on all this, but right now, it's the understanding of, after reading and discussing and some of the reasons that are listed in the comments and others presented, that it did not meet that by all four members. So let's go to the dimensional issue. So in other words, now what we're saying is the same set of rules. I'm going to read it out loud. That strict compliance with the areas, setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, or density would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose, or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. So this is where these are written in a way that all of a sudden you put a different hat on, and then you say, well, this is a different situation when it comes into the dimensional. You've got a situation here where the old house was built in a plat, and it's been there, and this is okay, and there's a reason for someone to have some kind of a break and some kind of a variance there. Quite often in our situation in a town like us where we've had small cottages and things, it's not like urban sprawl where planning has gotten pretty routine. So when you read that, it's a lot different than reading it maybe in lot coverage, where you say, well, they got a situation here that's been around for a while, and there is reason for can be for someone to have a garage that they couldn't have if they don't meet the setback. They couldn't get a car in, or depending on what that line leaves there, or they'd have to move the whole house back. There just doesn't make sense. There is a reason, and you look at the rest of the neighborhood, or you might see where other people are close to that lot line along the line. So there you have a situation where a lesser some type of a variance would provide justice to them, along with some of the neighborhood situations, which has happened in the past,
Mhm.
5, 6 years ago. So today, we're looking at a 13, depending on how we, how we look at these numbers, let's just call it for now, a 13-foot on the accessory building and a 10-foot on the main building, right? That is where the numbers that we're put in front of us. And whether that is 12 and 6 or 7, depending on the scale, we'll have to maybe decide, but that might be where we say no more, we wouldn't allow anything further than what's existing.
Make a suggestion.
Yeah, right.
No encroaching further
Yeah, yeah.
than what's already encroached.
So if we were to say, well, I can see where, someone would want to expand a garage or whatever, and they weren't encroaching any further, whether that standard meets that, or whether that is something you would say that's permissible, but it has to meet other rules too. It's not just that rule. Same thing on the main building. So, but we're separating the two. Remember, we're separating those two buildings. One's accessory and one's the principal resident. I would say that to start with, my opinion would be is that the existing house, if you were to expand upon that I can see a reason for allowing a variance of 10 feet if it was to meet lot coverage, if it met that type of a expansion, and it was meeting any other, heights or any other restrictions that are required. That would do substantial justice to the, to the property owner, and I don't know that in this case, because of where it's at, that it would really increase, that would, it's not going to keep them from using it, but it's going to improve the way they use that property as long as it met any other things like lot coverage. Because we didn't meet lot coverage in this standard. I don't know if anybody has any opinions of whether they agree with me on that or don't. But then you go into the garage could be looked at more as an increase, but is it, there is, on a plan view here, there is room to expand a garage or an accessory building. Again, has to meet the other parameters. But giving them a variance on that, what I would be concerned with is that, it still has to be tied back in. You can't just, you don't want to give it, they already have in theory, they already have a non-conforming situation. If you give them a variance for that, you have to say, oh, it's 13 feet back and 12 foot over, or how far over? We don't know. How far does that how far can you allow that to go?
As far as lot coverage would allow it.
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, why wouldn't we say put it in the house, don't put it in the garage?
Say that again?
Why wouldn't we say put it in the house, square off the house, don't put it in the garage?
The allowable square foot.
Allowable square footage, because to me that makes, this is where the gray zone comes in, but it would certainly potentially improve the quality of the house, improve the longevity of the house, because there would be adding that infrastructure.
So it's, yeah, you're saying you can see the reasoning on the livable structure,
Yeah,
not the accessory building, as more of meeting that standard than the accessory building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with some modifications to what's been presented.
correct.
So, let me see if I can summarize what I'm thinking you said. That it would be possible to allow a dimensional variance for the house or the existing garage, the existing house or the existing garage, a dimensional variance, as long as it did not extend beyond the current building outside of the buildable area, the allowed buildable area. So they cannot extend closer to East Street. They cannot encroach into the setbacks any more than the existing buildings do, but they can expand up to the allowable lot coverage.
I followed that.
I followed that.
Because, yeah, you're making sure you're allowing that variance on each building, right? That way?
And it's up to them to choose how to use their lot coverage.
Yeah.
So if it was more important to expand the garage to have a work area up above it or a rental unit or whatever they're doing there, that's a decision they could make. If it was more important to expand the house a little bit, that's fine. And then they've still got the option of a second floor. They've still got the option to raise the house up and put a proper foundation and or a basement under it, which gives them more living area. And or storage that could offset the storage that perhaps they're looking for in the garage. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
I think you might find that would be a common finding of facts on some of the other standards. My opinion.
That would be a lesser,
Knowing what those standards say.
yeah, that would be variance number, standard number 2, a lesser variance,
Yeah,
a lesser allowed.
right. Well, that's a question. Sometimes you say, yeah, it's easier to say that meets that on standard 2, but not 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't always meet all 4. But in this case, we are saying that it's possible that, I guess, you know what, I think we're in a good track as far as the way we're looking at the setbacks. I do think that sometimes when you do that, number one, does have a hard time allowing them to say it meets that, to unreasonably prevent them from using the property for permitted use. It doesn't. I mean, it's a functioning right now.
I mean, in
Uh,
the purest
but-
standard of what's written.
You
It
could
is-
consider it a
Burden, unnecessarily
unnecessarily
burdensome.
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 Yeah. With the 1-car garage or just
Or
because of
the jigs and jogs in the house or the crumbling
Yeah, you
foundation.
could do that. Okay.
I'm still having trouble with the garage. It's a garage, it's a functioning garage. But we're dealing with just dimensional, but still to expand a functional garage into a bigger garage and then somehow, and maybe we didn't spend enough time on what the exact function of this garage was, but you know, and now we're talking rental unit and, you know, and I mean, as far as I know, you can't really rent I believe the ordinance says you can't rent just the garage. You gotta rent it, the house and the garage.
No, you could rent it
It's
an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
You can rent it independently
Yeah.
into 2 different leases.
Yeah.
If you
No.
go in front of the planning commission,
Yeah.
getting special use approval, you
Yeah.
can do that.
What is the size of the deck on the back? So we've got 26.3 on the length of the garage. What is the length of the deck? Is that? That looks like an infinity signal. Is that a 6 or an 8, or let's assume it's an 8? 8, 6, 14, 34, 3. So if you took 188, divided by 34. Let's call it 34. They could only bump the garage out 5 feet. At the distance they're showing. And still meet lot coverage if the house stayed exactly as it is today. I agree with you, Rich, but I think it's their choice where they want to spend their square feet.
I see what you're saying. Are we talking now still in terms of dimensional variance?
Dimensional only, yes.
Yeah.
Because what we're saying is we can grant a dimensional variance, provided it goes no closer to East Street than the existing buildings, and provided that the sum total of the lot coverage remains at 30% or less.
Right.
And
And the whole concept of allowing variances is to still further the zoning ordinance, but allow a little more flexibility for hardship but to further the cause of the zoning ordinance. I mean, isn't that stated somewhere, but not on these?
I think the point of variance is to fix a hardship, allow you to break the ordinance because of a hardship. Yeah.
What I'm trying to get back to, and maybe I just can't do it, is, you know, the objective of residential zoning is for homes, for, single family homes. We also allow some accessory, the definition of accessory. And so, I'm more likely to grant a variance to a single family home as part of the in furtherance of the zoning ordinance as I am the accessory building.
well, I can agree with you because there's no real hardship with the garage. The hardship is with the foundation of the building that's 100 and some years old, not the garage.
But anyway,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
not to overcomplicate things, but one thing that did come to mind, the second story of the garage is an ADU. That's subject to a 600 square foot maximum, or 30% of the size of the first floor size of or I think the gross square footage of the home. So I believe that ADU would be limited to 502 square feet, second floor, and they're at 442 right now. So if they were to expand that building, they couldn't expand the second floor ADU more than 60 or 70 feet before it would then become non-compliant with the ADU regulations. So that might, if there's, if the applicant wants to consider which one is more important, that may guide it more toward the principal, because the ADU couldn't be expanded. Now they could do second floor space over a new garage port there, but it would have to be completely separate from the ADU living space, which you might make it a little bit awkward and maybe not exactly with what the intent was. So just something for the applicant and the board to consider.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah,
So
But you're right, but I mean, the hardship, where's the hardship in the garage?
there isn't one.
Yeah.
The hardship is the foundation of the house.
Right.
so what we're saying is we can see the on the standard number one, and we were mostly stating the fact that, excuse me, that it's unnecessarily burdensome, right? Conformity is unnecessarily burdensome. Was the bottom line
Yes.
that on the house, that would be allowable for a variance then, not
Yes.
on the garage.
Yes.
Okay. I believe that's,
And Let me
Go
jump
ahead.
ahead if I could. So number two, we'd be talking about a lesser relaxation, which would give relief and be more consistent with justice to others in the neighborhood and the community. Number three, that the plight of the owner is unique circumstances of the property and not to the general neighborhood conditions, and the unique circumstances of this property are the 100-year-old house
Yeah,
and the crumbling foundation.
then you always have number 4.
And then it's not self-created because the foundation is crumbling, and that's not something the owner created.
Right.
So that's my thoughts for discussion on a dimensional variance for the house, as long as it conforms to the lot coverage issue.
And I think, yeah, I think that would carry all the way through in our thought process by basically saying that's the existing house structure only and not the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where that could carry through all the other standards.
Yes.
Rich, are you
Yes.
deep in prayer over there?
Yeah, no, I'm.
Give us
I'm-
guidance on
I'm-
this issue.
I'm not sleeping, I'm
I didn't think you were.
listening.
Okay.
And I understand and, yeah,
Let's,
Do you have a different opinion, Rich?
no,
and so what we're saying is, right now, what we're really understanding amongst us is the fact that it relates that it would be potential for us to go back and make a motion that would allow a variance for the main structure, 10 feet required, a 10-foot variance,
To be no closer than
to be no
the
closer than the existing
structure.
And that only, not the accessory building.
Or could we table the motion? Obviously, you've listened to every single thing we've just said. They make the decisions on what they want to present back with the spirit of what we've just shared.
If
Yeah.
if they come back with what we've shared, it can be administratively approved. Because we would be granting the dimensional variance. It would have to be within lot coverage,
Got it,
and it could be administratively approved, and they wouldn't have to come back to us.
got it. Thank you.
Can we approve a very general variance as that? Then could you speak to whether or not we would need
A more specific plan, can we just say if they wanted to expand,
they could do so to, 10 feet from the property line, but no more than that? I mean, is that enough?
So I think it's always better to be more specific if possible, but in this situation, I think I understand what you're saying, what was being said earlier about going out to the same line. I think David recommended the language that would kind of do the same thing. So if that were the case, I think it would be okay, but you want to avoid a situation where you approve the variance. And then, as we were saying earlier, if the actual scale of the building is different, then it would affect how much that variance could actually impose. So I think it's kind of a catch-22 as to whether or not we want to be super specific in this case. It depends on exactly what we're going to approve.
it's really troublesome to me and has been and still is that we're dealing with blue lines
I think in the interest
and,
of
and,
time,
and,
there is a request in front of us.
and well, how I have confidence that these numbers are accurate, even, or numbers on a table that,
You were about,
how do you
I
know?
was just saying that, when it comes down to theoretically, can we move this so that they can do whatever administratively instead of coming back here? I would maintain that there is a very specific request in front of you that should be addressed.
I follow what you're saying there as far as that you would have to have, if we had that just approved by you, you'd have to make sure all those drawings, without us reviewing those drawings, have to meet everything that is required.
Oh, I was just saying that, we need to keep things moving, with the request that's in front of us and not, I just don't want to get to the point where we're approving
Okay.
very theoretical plans that may or may not be relevant. You know,
Yeah.
So either deny it because it doesn't, not all those standards have been met, or table it with the feedback that we've given
I mean,
and allow the.
I don't know about, if Dave and Trent want to weigh in here, but I much prefer, if we're going to, approve a variance, I think it should be tied into some plans. I don't love approving a variance for, nothing. So it makes it easier moving forward. It can be administratively approved, they can build out to a certain degree, but variances run with the land, and I think we might run into dangerous situations just approving, that kind of,
So is your suggestion that we'd have two choices? One would be to deny it flat out, both dimensional and lot coverage. We've already denied lot coverage, or we will be. Or we table it, we deny the lot coverage and table the dimensional, asking the applicant to come back with plans that satisfy lot coverage and show us what their dimensions would be and what are they specifically requesting for dimensional.
I think that would be an option. Again, I don't know if Trent or Dave want to weigh in here, but if we're approving plans, I think we should have the plans.
Yeah, I would just agree, and I would also echo, I think it's always better to be specific in this situation. I think, as you said, Luke, it makes the administrative side of it easier on the back end. And it avoids the situation of where you're approving a variance based on sort of incomplete plans or we're unsure of certain numbers, and then you could have some unintended consequences from that. And so if David has anything else to add, I would just echo that I think it's always better to be specific.
Next question for Trent. If we table it, it's tabled indefinitely until it comes off the table with a new application. We do not have to table it to a date certain.
That would be my understanding, yes, is that you could table it indefinitely until you decide to take it back up or until you get the new information from the applicant.
Okay.
So I think what I'm hearing, if I could clarify, essentially what I'm gathering is that you would look to deny the lot coverage request and table the request for a setback variance pending further plans that conform to the
Correct.
lot coverage of this district.
Correct. In other words, without emotion, but in general discussion for amongst us, you have to meet all four standards.
Absolutely.
So number one standard for lot coverage is not looking good. So you're already down the hole. So that's gone. If we continue, if we get a motion based on that first finding of fact, we can go through all the rest of them on lot coverage, and we would also do that. We should, I think. But that's why we're trying to separate them. Then we're going back and trying to say, this is where we're at. We could table that portion. I guess that's the question. Can we do that?
Yes,
Yeah.
So,
we can. Rich, are you comfortable with that approach?
Yes.
Are you smiling?
No, that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the applicant at this point. You understand what we're saying? You're hearing us, Chris. If you have a comment on that, I'll take it. Not unusual for us to hear what you're saying.
I
Because
appreciate
you might say,
Never mind.
one or the other. Yeah, so go ahead.
I appreciate the questions and the dialogue. It's not an easy thing to figure. Unfortunately, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars what we're trying to do, and it's just not worth investing to bump out 2 square feet here and a couple square feet there. So this was our kind of project to make it the final project to stay here. So unfortunately, it's a moot point. So we're kind of looking all in or not and moving. So it's a tough decision.
Okay. Based on that, we can continue and just go through pretty much then the way we started, I guess, with making a judgment on the standard on both issues. Right? Got that?
Yep.
We're trying to make sure we understand it, make sure we are doing the best thing we can for ourselves and for you or whatever, but, I think I understand. I think you understand our situation, but we truly understand your situation as far as, let's see if this is even a possibility.
Trust me, it's not easy on both.
Don't want to
ends.
kick the
Yeah.
ball too much further down the road if it's not gonna hit any goal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions while I'm up here?
I don't think so.
No.
Not for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Okay,
we go back to doing these as a package.
but it was a good exercise.
Yes.
Wonderful exercise. Because it got us thinking and talking about it. It's a hard time to get there sometimes, right?
It's not an easy one.
Not an easy
It's
one.
something that requires a lot of thought.
Luke told us that. All right. So, my opinion is we've been through number one, right?
Yes.
I thought Jim's summary was a perfect 1, 2, 3, 4.
The way you read it, or?
Well, the way that he went through each one,
Oh.
talking about how it was not in compliance,
Well,
or not met, rather, not met.
I'm gonna go back and say that we have all decided that it did not meet based on looking at, we're considering both situations. That one did not meet. Both. Or at least, doesn't matter if it met both, it doesn't meet it. We already decided it doesn't meet it based on lot coverage. And we're asked to look at both at one time here. So, the comments, if we want to go back and reference any of the, or exclude any of the comments that are in there in a motion, we should do that now. If you feel that any of the comments are not worthy to keeping them in there, they might be worth keeping.
I think they're worth keeping, yeah.
I do too. So, to make sure we're very appropriate, let's going to take the second one. And Rich, would you mind reading the second one?
Okay, that a variance would do substantial justice to the owner as well as to other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. Well, I'm trying to think of how to phrase that. In terms of we determined, at least to me, that the lot coverage was excessive in the application as submitted, and that it wouldn't do justice to adjoining property owners or the community as a whole. Now, in terms of I wanted to leave, I still in my mind left the door open to a lesser relaxation that would give the applicant substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. And especially I noted the comments that there was basically a favorable tends to be a favorable view in the neighborhood. But, so I thought that there might be, still think there might be a door possibly left open there.
Dimensional?
Well, for lot coverage in terms of dimensional, I'm unable to determine from the plans as submitted what the dimensions are. So I don't believe that standard is met.
I agree with you on the fact of as far as not being met, because of the amount of coverage that it falls within this plan that's presented in front of us. It is a significant number compared to anything that I'm familiar with in my 25 years on this board. to have any kind of a number of lot coverage that high when something is functional per se as it is. That's my opinion of it.
I would agree the standard is not met.
I would agree also.
I agree, the standard's not met.
Jim Hunriser, you want to do 3?
That the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. As we discussed, the corner lot designation and nonconformity of size and width are somewhat unique. But these factors don't relate to the lot coverage. However, we did learn new information about some of the plight of the owner based on the existing house itself and some of the needs to repair. But if we're taking this as a whole, then this project is not met as well.
I agree the standard is not met.
I agree also. Rich?
Oh, agree. It's not met.
Okay. I'll do number 4, that the problem is not self-created or based upon personal financial circumstances. Well, I guess basically one of the comments was that the problem is related to setback compliance would be considered a factor to the pre-existing conditions of the lot. The expanding of it to, the lot coverage maximum 30 foot would be exceeded. And I don't know, even though it is it doesn't meet the standard lot in town, it's not that far off of a square footage of a lot. And it's already, we already have a situation where, it's shifted with a variance on one side. So I guess that part of it's, it's definitely not self-created. There's easy way to say it meets that part of it. Definitely it's not always a financial situation, because in this case, you're trying to make it a more functional, functional type of a situation. So, a lot of times this variance is one that it's really hard to give a yes to. The bottom line to me on this one is the lot coverage. That is self-created as far as trying to maximize that lot coverage. As far as as we've talked before, the residential side is not so much that way. So based on still going back to the lot coverage, I guess I'd have to say no. As much as I can get half of that one right and half of it wrong, I still say no.
You say that the standard is not met.
No, as it's not met, yeah.
I
Based
agree.
on lot
It
coverage.
is not fully met, yes.
Yeah.
Agree. Oh, that's a good, I like to agree, not fully met.
Yeah. Okay. So, based on our review of the 4 standards and our understanding of what was been presented in front of us this evening, I guess it'd be best for us to go to a motion that is either to, is to deny based on our standards or based on our findings of fact. Anybody you want to do that? Anybody want to make a motion to do that?
Sure.
Recommendation, okay. Jim? Bout?
I move to deny the variance request for 810 Allegan Street to increase the maximum lot coverage to 38%, reduce the principal building setback to 10 feet for a building addition, and reduce the accessory building setback to 7 feet for an accessory building, because standard 1, 2, 3, and 4 have not been satisfied.
Second.
we have a motion by Jim Bauk, a second by Jim Hunriser. Any other discussions? Before we ask for a vote? Richard, you good?
Yeah, yeah. Not pleasant, but.
Yeah, I understand.
Great.
Sarah, I'd ask for a vote on the motion that's been presented.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Hunterizer.
Yes.
Thank you, Bastiak.
Yes. All right. It's your request as presented to us tonight for lot coverage and the dimensional setbacks has not been met based on our findings.
Sale signs going up. Come by.
Okay. All right, item number 7, communications. Anybody have anything for that?
Do we have anything general coming in or?
All the communications that I received, I have 4 in the packet. And then I got maybe 3 additional, that everything was sent to you and everything was listed on the sheet I gave you at the start.
And do you anticipate a meeting
Did I
next?
not?
Did you give us a sheet of something? What are you talking about?
I left you one at the bottom.
Yeah. This should look like this.
Oh, no, that's the letters.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about that correspondence. Yeah, I'm sorry. There was one.
I'm sorry, I'm not misunderstanding what, communication.
No, communications is just anything you got.
From me.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
From
Do you have
from
any?
you or people who have communicated to you and?
Well, like, it's a very tough job, this is, so I appreciate you all taking the time to read the packet and you gotta make a hard decision, this thing, so, and also I would note that I have nothing for you in November, so.
Okay, nothing you know of. Well, it wouldn't happen. I guess it'd be.
Well, if it came in now, I wouldn't have.
Yeah,
Wouldn't notice it, so I don't think we'll be having a November meeting.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Thank you to our staff and to those
Yeah.
on the telly.
Yeah, thank you,
also,
guys.
Dave and
Thank you
Trent.
for that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
This one has been a very tough one, and obviously I'm still fresh, so Dave's been extremely helpful walking through all of it, so.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it is, but it is. ZBA member comments we've had, other than we've been thanking you for this evening and what you've been doing. So if there's anything else. And then any public comments, which we have no more public present, and I believe no public.
Can I suggest for future meetings, we move the CBA member comments after the public comments? It's typically how we do it in the other.
I think that'd be fine. Yeah, absolutely. I think that should go that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that you should be reversed, actually.
Okay,
Actually,
are you okay with that?
Oh, me.
I'm not so sure.
Probably check to see if there's something specific in our bylaws, and then it might be something that we need to, I don't know if that's something we.
Sarah, would it go above communication even?
What's that?
Do you, even above communication?
I just suggest switching the public and the CBA.
Just slide this one down.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know.
Public comments. should
All right,
be
that's
before.
fine. No, that's fine. No, that's good, but I'm just saying that's.
Do we need a motion to do that?
I will just note, if I may, that it is set forth in the bylaws. Article 7 has the order of business and it has the public comment section after the commission comments. You can amend the bylaws. You can amend these bylaws at any regular or special meeting upon affirmative vote of 4 of the 5 regular members of the board. So you'd have to have a unanimous tonight.
We have to have
5 regular members, so. We couldn't have 3 regular members and an alternate, hypothetically.
That it says 4 out of 5 regular members, so I suppose that's probably.
Part of 5 regular.
We don't have 4 regular members right at the moment.
Four regular members right now.
The comments were-
Well, actually we do, not here, but.
But we might want to change the bylaws on that topic.
Actually, I do, yeah, I do have a,
Regular, yeah, no.
Thanks for that clarification.
before I close, I do have a question in front of, it's okay right here, and I don't think it matters, under ZBA comments, that, Kate, has resigned due to the fact that she's, traveling on a boat for doing the Great Loop for a year. And may not become a member again. So we do have we have a regular member situation where typically if a alternate like you, which would be have more seniority, would want to move into the regular as opposed to the alternate, then we would ask you to consider that, and it'd have to be approved by council and all that. But is that something you would be interested in?
Luke and I talked about it. Today. My big concern is how much traveling I'm about to start doing. And so I just worry about how many meetings I might have to miss. Just
That's why
because,
we have alternates. but
right,
anyway.
so I think I might be a good alternate potentially because I'm
Okay,
of my travel schedule that's coming up for the next 4 to 5-ish month. Like I could come to November, couldn't come to December, January, or February or March. Assuming we would meet on the same meeting.
All right.
schedule.
Having a knowledgeable alternate is just as,
So-
necessary.
yeah,
too.
that's fine. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. I just wanted,
yeah,
I wasn't
thank
sure.
you.
I
No,
didn't know you
I'm-
had that conversation, so
Yeah,
that's
I'm-
good.
I'm-
Okay, that's all I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we were understanding. So we all have to maybe start thinking about anybody we may want to
Yeah.
Post a notice.
ask them would be a good member.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
have you?
it.
Okay.
Luke, if you find somebody has better schedule than I do to be an alternate that's more available than I am happy to step down to have somebody who's more available. So, like what's good for the,
We got.
The board is what-
applications in, so.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, then I will call the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
motion.
I would.
Oh,
make
that's
a-
right. We have to have a motion.
I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Forget about that.
Second.
Do we have to have a vote on that?
With
All
this
in
voice-
favor,
Voice vote.
signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, Captain.
Aye, Captain. Nice